Right now, I'm in the middle of a 10-part video series counting down the top 200 greatest rap albums of all time from Rolling Stone, one of our old friends, one of the publications that I love to tackle their lists. Right as I do this, of course, another publication who has some kind of say in hip-hop decides to drop a top 100 list. This time, it's Pitchfork, an online music publication. You gotta love that timing. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking a break. We're exactly halfway through the Rolling Stone list, 5 out of 10 videos in, and Pitchfork in this case is going to get the same treatment. Instead, this is a top 100 list. I'm going to take a break from Rolling Stone for now to tackle this more recent and, in this day and age, subsequently more relevant list. Pitchfork's top 100 is getting a 3-part breakdown. I'm not going through every album in detail. Here's how I'm going to do it. 3 videos. The first video, numbers 100 through 61, that will be this video. The second video is going to be number 60 through 21, and in those 2 videos, in these first 80 on the list, I'm going to pick albums that are important to me or picks that I thought were particularly bad. I'm not going to touch on every single album, but what I will do in the top 20, I'll dedicate a separate video to that, and I will go through each album in this list's top 20. I haven't seen the entire list yet. I'm only dealing with the first 40 here. That's the only part of this list that I've dissected so far. It's a complete mystery as to what number 60 through number 2 are. I know what number 1 is, and little spoiler alert, it's something that I'm very happy about. So let's get started right away at number 100, an important album to me, one I disagree with, Snoop Dogg's Doggystyle. I don't know how anybody places this album at number 100. It's an album that was just so important when it came out. It was part of a very important period in West Coast hip-hop in the mid-90s when G-Funk was emerging. It was a career-defining effort for Snoop Dogg, and it was an era-defining effort for West Coast hip-hop. It's such an influential and forward-thinking album musically, courtesy of Dr. Dre on the beats. Snoop brings a certain charisma on the mic, and this is by far his best lyrical offering of his entire career. He came out strong, and he's been in a decline ever since. I know some of the subject material, it's a little bit transgressive, the pimpin' stuff hasn't aged well. I don't know, you can't put this at number 100. This album is just way too important. Musically, it's one of the best hip-hop albums of all time. It's a fun album. For me, it's top 50, putting it back at number 100. That's an oversight. I think it's an egregious way to start, but I do think that Pitchfork wanted to start their list with sort of an attention-grabbing pick, something that's maybe a little bit controversial. It's going to piss off older heads like me, so I guess I fell for it. Number 93, we have Gang Starr's highly celebrated Moment of Truth from 1998. I love Gang Starr, and while I hope this is not the only Gang Starr album we see on this list, I do have a feeling that it will be. I want to point out that in the beginning of this article, Pitchfork kind of had a little bit of a prologue, a little bit of a setup to this list, and unlike Rolling Stone, they laid out the fact that, hey, we don't have time to list multiple albums by the same artist. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to minimize the amount of artists that are repeats on here. Rolling Stone's kind of done the same thing, but they didn't come out and say it. I appreciate that Pitchfork's been a little bit more clear, but what this is going to mean is there's a lot of awesome albums that are going to get snubbed, and I don't really think that's fair or right. I'm planning to do my top 100 hip-hop albums of all time list, and I can tell you right now there's going to be entries from the same artist multiple times. That's coming down the pike after I get through Rolling Stone in this. For me, I like Gang Starr's second and third albums, 1992's Daily Operation and 1994's Hard to Earn, better than this one. This is still a great album. It's number 3 in their discography for me. This is a very popular album when it comes to Gang Starr. They're sort of an underground act. Guru and Premier were a little bit less visible earlier in the 90s, but I do think that's when their best output was. I'm afraid we're just going to see the wrong pick, in my opinion, for a lot of artists if they're going with one album in their discography. And I do understand why they go with Moment of Truth. This was a very important album in really breaking Gang Starr a little bit into the mainstream when there was a lot of crossover between underground and mainstream. During the Daily Operation, Hard to Earn days, there was less of that. Gang Starr had a hit with mass appeal off of Hard to Earn, but the songs off of Moment of Truth were much more visible. Songs like the title track, You Know My Steez, Above the Clouds. So while I love Gang Starr's Moment of Truth, and while it's a late 90s classic standing up during a tough time for East Coast hip-hop, it's not the best Gang Starr album in my eyes, and Daily Operation and or Hard to Earn belong on this list instead. The Cold Vein by Cannibal Ox is one of my favorite underground hip-hop albums of all time. It's from 2001. It comes in on this list at number 91, and while I would put it way higher, it goes at least in my top 50, if not my top 25 or top 30. I do want to say that Pitchfork is acknowledging the greatness of this album. You have to understand that a number of writers probably came together and made this list happen, and there was enough support for this album, probably among multiple writers, that it did make it here. So if you're going to make a top 100 list from any publication, you're going to get a vote of confidence from multiple people. And The Cold Vein, that's one of those albums that's kind of easy to miss or overlook. book, so I'm glad it makes it onto this list. This record is driven by LP's cold, futuristic beats and the abstract street raps of Vast Air and Vord Omega. Again, not a great placement. 91 is something I am not happy with because it should be higher, but that's a personal preference. But the Cold Vein being on this list, that's a great thing to see. Oh, and the song Pigeon is an absolutely perfect song, one of my favorites of the entire 2000s. Main Attractions are an Oakland, California-based duo that laid the foundations for cloud rap in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Pitchfork puts their 2011 mixtape 808s and Dark Grapes 2 at number 82. I'm not going to spend that long on this one here, but I think this is an oversight. I think their second full-length album, 808s and Dark Grapes 3, is a better record. That one's from 2015. But they're going with an influential pick. This album was very influential on early cloud rap and led to a lot of albums and a lot of artists coming out and sounding how they did. So it's influence over quality. That's something we see a lot on Rolling Stone's list. I guess we're going to see it in spots here on Pitchfork's list. I don't agree with this when we're really literally talking about the highest quality and the best rap albums. Those two terms are kind of going hand in hand. While Dark Grapes 2 was decent, I think the world needs to hear Dark Grapes 3 a lot more. That's one of the most underrated 2010s hip-hop albums in a sea of output over a crowded smattering of subgenres. Black Up by Shabazz Palaces is number 76. I think this is a fantastic placement. This is Butterfly from the legendary 90s jazz rap group Diggable Planets. He is the one-man show behind this project. This is experimental, it's mechanical, it's atmospheric. It has a strong place within the Afrofuturism movement in hip-hop. Butterfly has always been a forward-thinking mind, and then he comes back here 20 years after the success of Diggable Planets and gives us this solid, attention-grabbing project all on his own, kind of out of left field. I don't think anybody expected this project to happen. It was Shabazz Palace's debut. Unfortunately, all of his other albums under that moniker have gone downhill in quality quite a bit, so we should celebrate this album because it is something special and it was groundbreaking for 2011. Not a lot of hip-hop sounded like this at that time. I'm so glad to see an Arm & Hammer project on this list. But again, if we're doing one album per artist in this case, I don't think 2017's Rome is the right album to pick here. Their latest effort at the time of this list dropping was 2023's We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. They do have a new album coming in, I think, a month or two. We Buy Diabetic Test Strips is considerably better than Rome, as is 2018's Paraffin, 2020's Shrines, and then 2021's Masterclass project with The Alchemist, Haram. If we see one of those albums later on the list, I'll feel better, but why are they picking Rome as the Arm & Hammer album to represent? It's literally a pick that just doesn't make sense. It's weird. It's strange. They have so much better output. Rome is not a bad album. It's got great energy. It's a furious album. Those guys don't pull any punches, but they have at least 3, maybe even 4 albums that are considerably better than this, that still have that energy, that still see them pulling no punches, so why Rome? Kool G Rap's debut solo album from 1995, 456, is on this list at number 68. This is a top 10 hip-hop album of all time for me. This absolutely deserves placement on any hip-hop fan's top 100 list. G-Rap spits some of the most notable darts of his entire storied career on this record. He carries this album by itself. This was as hardcore as it got during the mid-90s, where New York hip-hop was decidedly gritty. I think this album is way underrated. It defined the era quite well. It lives in the shadow of other more marquee albums from this time. It shouldn't. This should be right up there with the Ready to Dies, the Enter the Wu-Tangs, the Infamouses. I don't agree with number 68. I think it should be way higher, but I believe this album deserves to be in any hip-hop fan's top 100 list, as I said, and I'm actually really glad to see Pitchfork acknowledging it here at a respectable place at number 68. We get towards the end of this section of the list, and there's 4 consecutive picks between 65 and 62 that I want to speak on. 65 is Scarface's The Diary, another incredibly hardcore mid-90s album, this time out of the South from Houston, Texas. Scarface gives a chilling account of inner city life and mixes it with kind of some self-reflection on mental health, and he does this over some really slick G-Funk beats courtesy of N.O. Joe. This album easily makes my top 50. I'm glad to see it here. It's a little bit underrated, but really not by that much. If we're gonna pick one album, they got this one right. You don't pick Scarface's 2002 album, The Fix. That album is highly overrated, and The Diary is by far his best. 64 is a more modern mafioso rap classic. It's Rock Marciano's debut from 2010, Marcberg. I love this album. I would agree with a placement inside the top 75 overall, but he's got a better album. His second album, Reloaded, is considerably stronger than this. This makes me think they're gonna snub it, and they shouldn't. I'm conflicted. Should I be celebrating this pick because they're acknowledging Rock Marciano, or should I be pissed because they're probably going to snub Reloaded. I haven't seen anything past number 61. I'm hoping that I'm wrong and Reloaded is on here. I don't think it will be, just based on Pitchfork's note at the beginning of this list saying we're going to try to minimize multiple albums by the same artist. So I think marcberg is it for the 21st century's most notable and influential mafioso-leaning MC, and I don't think that's quite the right pick. I think 63 is a great pick on all accounts. It's 8-Ball and MJG's On Top of the World from 1995, easily their best album. They're coming out of Memphis. They didn't quite sound like that lo-fi horrorcore thing that was going on, that massive movement in the city at that time. These guys were more typical, polished southern hip-hop. That's not a bad thing. There's strong G-funk elements on here in the beats, and the song All in My Mind is one of their best. I love their debut album coming out hard as well, but this is the 8-Ball and MJG album that you should pick. The placement is appropriate. It's in my top 75. Pitchfork nailed this pick. So while I like the previous 3 picks, 62 is a massive surprise. It's Dr. Dre's The Chronic all the way down here. First, they underrate the hell out of Doggystyle, the other of the 2 really big seminal G-funk albums on Death Row Records from that era. And then they're going to go ahead and slot The Chronic in at number 62. What credible hip-hop critic or publication puts The Chronic outside their top 50? Tell me that. This album revolutionized West Coast hip-hop the same way Doggystyle did, and it's not quite as advanced in the soundscapes when you're comparing it to Doggystyle, but this came first. This was more of a pioneering album, and Dre really refined his style on this record. These are some of the best, most lush, most intricately produced beats of the 90s, along with Doggystyle. And these albums are from earlier in the decade. There was an entire 70-80% of the decade to go when these came out, and I still feel like these are some of the best produced albums of the 90s. The tag team job between Snoop and Dre on the mic is second to none. I see Raekwon and Ghostface on Only Built for Cuban Links. They did a great job tag teaming that, but I think they kind of got that idea, or were at least inspired a little bit by Snoop and Dre. That's not to mention the guest appearances from a ton of other great up-and-coming emerging death row artists. Now Dre, let's be honest, he's not the greatest person in human history. He has a track record of domestic violence. Perhaps that kind of unspokenly fuels this low pick on Pitchfork's end. I do think it's also driven by the fact that a lot of the subject matter on here is pretty transgressive, if we're being honest. And I think that's pretty reflective of that attitude that translated to real life. But you kind of have to separate the art from the artist a little bit and realize that this album is so advanced and was so groundbreaking. It's a stunning album sonically, and even the lyrical bits that are stuck in the past shouldn't quite keep this out of the top 50, I don't think. It's still one of the most notable West Coast hip-hop albums of all time. 62, that's a little disrespectful. So those are a few thoughts that I had on albums that are important to me. I do want to call out some equally trash picks though while we're at it. I'm going to start by picking on number 98. It's Foxy Brown's third album, Broken Silence. It's not even close to her best, and Pitchfork justifies this pick by saying that Foxy came into her own as a writer and MC on this record. Did they hear what she did on Il Na Na in 1996? Did they hear what she did with The Firm around that same time? What about Affirmative Action off of Nas As It Was Written? No, this is not a good record. It's a disappointing turn in what was a promising early career. The song Candy, it's just straight up terrible, and this whole thing is kind of that same type of low quality, and it comes in at a runtime of like an hour and 15 minutes. It's an exhausting record. As I said, Il Na Na, her debut from 1996, leaps and bounds ahead of this one. Il Na Na is a mid-90s slept-on New York classic. Assuming Pitchfork is gonna pick one Foxy Brown album, you're gonna make it this one? Like, what the hell are they thinking? This is mainstream bubblegum garbage masquerading as hardcore East Coast hip-hop. Now, this is another artist I'm assuming we're not gonna see another project from. Maybe I'm wrong, but if they're gonna include Lupe Fiasco's Fahrenheit 115 Part 2 mixtape as the one entry that he gets on this list, that's just stupid. You have Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor, Lupe Fiasco's The Cool, Tetsuo and Youth, Samurai, so many other great projects that could be on this list. But then they go with one of his early mixtapes instead. Even if we do see one of those albums that I mentioned later on the list, this is kind of an average project at best, and therefore I don't think it should make any top 100 list. Let me see. Let's just calm down, pump the brakes here a little bit. See if one of those other albums I mentioned is on this list a little bit later before I get too pissed about it. I'm making an assumption that this is the only Lupe Fiasco project we're going to see, and if my assumption is right, this is trash. A Sexy Red album in the top 100? Sorry, that's just not going to work for me. She's charismatic, she's fun, but top 100 of all time, are we being serious right now? I hope this is a joke. I always got down with No Limit Records and really anything coming out of New Orleans in the 90s. I'm assuming we're going to see some further projects from No Limit and Cash Money a little bit later later on this list. But number 85 is the album Shell Shocked by No Limit artist Mac. What? That's a rather obscure album, that was fun when it came out, but it doesn't really have a withstanding reputation and acclaim, so I just don't understand this pick at all. It's a weird flex, and I'm just noticing Pitchfork kind of emerging with this trend of picking these strange, random, and ultimately inappropriate picks. They're definitely trying to be different and stand out, but they're reaching at this point, and it's painfully obvious. Veeze is an interesting Detroit rapper that's defining the city's modern sound, but to put a guy who's been in the game less than 10 years on the top 100 list, this pick is pandering to whoever his audience is. I'd feel the same way if Pitchfork included an RXK nephew project, for instance. This guy feels like Detroit's version of RXK, to be honest. Bizarre Ride to the Far Side needs to be way higher. It's number 77. I don't love this album like some people do, but 77 is a bit disrespectful. This is one of the albums that defined the West Coast underground scene of the 90s, kind of the alternative to the glossy stuff that was emerging at the time. This led to a whole subgenre on its own. It influenced so many acts later in the 90s. There was a huge backpacker scene on the West Coast. By the end of the decade, it started with albums like this. I didn't include this in the albums that were important to me because this is one I was a little late to. I've really appreciated its greatness kind of in the last 15 years, but it doesn't really hold the same personal significance as a lot of the other albums I talked about earlier in the video. I just think number 77 is a bit too low. This one goes in my top 50. This has retroactively become an album that I've loved. Yes, Bad Bunny is an infectious artist. Yes, he's bigger than Jesus himself right now after being awarded the Super Bowl halftime show. But should any of his albums crack any publication's top 100 hip-hop albums list? No. And this is partially due to the fact that, first of all, the albums, they're interesting, but they're not great. They're just not top 100 material, but they're also not hip-hop material. He's a pop-leaning reggaeton artist and much less of a rapper. There's elements of trap and hip-hop in his stuff, but he's a pop star. He's a Latin pop star. Why is he on hip-hop lists? And number 67 to boot, I could probably understand if it was number 97. Even then, I'd probably still be a little bit upset. But 67, man, you're taking spots away from other artists that deserve it. Draco the Ruler's Cold Devil mixtape. This is one I talked about in my Rolling Stone series. Draco had a ton of influence on that 2010s DIY LA mixtape scene. He was mega influential on that scene in the last few years of his life, but unfortunately, he's not a very good rapper and does not belong on any top 100 list, especially if we're talking all the way up at number 61. Well, that's it for my analysis, my take of numbers 100 through 61. As always, let me know what you guys think. For me, this is a really weird, different list. It feels like Pitchfork is trying too hard to separate themselves from the other publications who have undergone a list like this. I like different. I like them trying to think outside the box, but some of these picks just really don't make sense to me. There are also a share of underrated classics on here. That's something that Rolling Stone is hugely guilty of, and in both cases, it annoys me. We'll see how this list evolves as it goes on. Next video tackles number 60 through 21. I'll see you there.